We are now starting a very special series, the Kabbalah of breathing and meditation, learning how to live in the moment, to calm our minds, and to live life fully. This is a subject that has always fascinated me, a subject which is very, very relevant to our day and age as we are immersed in so many different issues. We are inundated with information, and the surplus of information does not permit us to find the inner peace, to really enjoy the moment, to really connect to what's important. And we are presently living in a world where everything has become a distraction. So if one does not know to calm his mind and to focus on the moment, it will be literally impossible for them to live a peaceful life. When I say a peaceful life, I mean being peaceful with others, being peaceful with the different situations you're presented with. You have to first be peaceful inside of you. So the purpose of this series on breathing and meditation and living in the moment is exactly what it says, what the title is. To learn how to breathe, to live in the moment, and learn how to meditate and find inside of us that little abode, that little space of calm, and connect to it on a regular basis in a way that it becomes the default mode. For many of us, the default mode is more getting upset, getting nervous, turning to different things, food, internet, drinking, smoking, whatever it is. Everybody has their way to be able to release stress. Imagine if your default mode to release stress was to connect yourself to your inner self at the deepest possible level and feel completely calm and be able to surrender your control to Hashem, to a higher power, and do it according to Torah in a way which is holy, in a way which is simple, in a way which is accessible for every one of us. That is really the purpose. So before I start, I would like to share with you a personal story. Many years ago, I brought my son to yeshiva to study in the city of Tzfat in Israel, the holy city of Tzfat, where the one that developed Kabbalah, the Ari Zal, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, is buried, where the one that composed Lechadodi, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, of the Code of Jewish Law, etc., etc. Great, very holy people are buried there. And actually, we, the Jewish people, are the only ones which will pay top dollars to have a view on the cemetery. Of course, if tzaddikim are buried there, it's something very special. So, what happened? I went to Tzfat. I want to tell you on a regular basis, those who travel to Israel, when that was easy in the olden times, would you go to Jerusalem, you go to another city, Tel Aviv, or whatever it is, and you do a one-day trip to Tzfat. To visit Kivrei Tzadikim, you stop in Meron, in Tveria, to Rabbi Meir Balanes, to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. But here, because I was bringing my son to yeshiva, and my son was a little embarrassed that I should sit in yeshiva and become a yeshiva boy again, so he asked me to please not sit in the yeshiva, but rather if I want to study, to go somewhere else. So I went to a synagogue, which is very active, which is at Tzanz, which is overviewing the mountains. It's beautiful. And I decided to stay in Tzfat for 3 days. Why is it relevant to our class? Because you know how in every country there is the place in the country which is noisy and the place which is calm and peaceful and silent? Well, Tzfat is the silent part of Israel. And in a city, in a town, normally you have the noisy part of the town and the silent part of the town. Well, the old city of Tzfat is the silent part of Tzfat. So I found myself in the silent part of the silent city of Israel. And it's 9 or 10 in the morning after I finished my morning prayers, Shacharit. And I decided I'm going to be here for 3 days, not for 1 day. So therefore, let me maximize this time to resource myself, reconnect, re-energize, go back to being a yeshiva boy. So it's 9 a.m. Of course, in America, it is 2 a.m. I opened my Gemara, I opened the Talmud. And my friends, I want to tell you, this was the biggest struggle. It took me 45 minutes. The Talmud was looking at me, I was looking at it, and I could not get my mind to calm down. I wasn't used to having a phone that is not being solicited because at 2 o'clock in the morning, everybody sleeps in America. And besides that, I didn't have a line. And having this complete calm and just facing myself with myself, it was very difficult. 45 minutes later, I was finally able to calm down, calm my mind, and start studying. Otherwise, it was just too difficult. We live in a time where our minds are being stimulated day in and day out. We have literally no freedom. Many years ago, I decided with my wife to take a little vacation, so to say. So we went to Boca Raton, a city which is about an hour away from where I live. We took a hotel, and we're walking in the streets. I said to my wife, there's something different in this city. I didn't know how to explain it. Later on, when I came back to my hotel room, there was a little book about the history of Boca Raton. And I found out that the bylaws of the city, including the fact that you're not allowed to have any billboards. And I found that extraordinary. I said, this is what it is. We're walking in the street and we do not feel that we are being attacked by media. And these were only billboards. So imagine for a second what's happening today. I personally keep my phone on silent all day long. And I put it on airplane mode when I go to sleep. So what happens with those who have their actual phones on all day? Each time you get a message, your attention is taken by that message. Suddenly your mind goes directly to the other side of the planet, wherever that message is coming from or that call. It's as if, for example, imagine that somebody would be coming at your door and knocking. You open the door. And then 2 minutes later, another person knocks. You open the door. And again, a person knocks. At a certain point, there's enough interruptions to become completely nuts, completely crazy. Well, you might say, Rabbi, you're exaggerating. Well, it's not really an exaggeration. It's not because we got used to this type of life, this way of living, that this is what we call a quality of life, to be interrupted all day by people knocking in our phones instead of our doors. It's even worse because we have it on our hands, we have it in our pockets, and each time that light flashes or that sound is emitted, then there is a concept even of what we call a phantom phone. Yes, just like, God forbid, people which have lost in the army, they've lost a limb, they've lost an arm, but they still feel their arm is still there in the pain it was at the moment that it got injured or cut, God forbid. So too, there are people which are so attached and so regulated in their mind, they've been so used to hearing that sound that sometimes they'll turn around thinking, my phone is calling and I need to be there. And therefore, a study has shown that people that have their phone in proximity already have 30% less attention. I personally put my phone, I turn it over when I'm in a meeting. But even then, the mere fact that you know that you have your phone around you does not permit you to be fully involved, fully invested in that moment. And therefore, you're not living life fully. A study that was made by a psychologist, she wrote a very nice paper, I forgot her name right now, but if you text me in private, I will be able to send it to you. She said that there's a study that was made concerning people that go to events and use their phones to take videos or pictures. That most of these people not only do not enjoy the event at the full sense of the word, not only do they not remember as much the event, but later on, when they see the event on the video, if they will see it, they will still not enjoy it or remember the feeling attached to this moment. And I want to tell you that feeling is something which is very powerful. And I'm going to explain it in a second. I had recently, when I had COVID for the second time, Baruch Hashem, and recovered, so I couldn't attend a wedding. The father of the bride sends me a video of the wedding. It sends me a little clip that he sent to his friends of the wedding of his own daughter. I was thinking to myself, how could you be so disconnected from something which is so important in your life? But we all do it. We all do it. And therefore, we don't have the memories that we used to have. And memories, and especially emotional memories, are very, very important for our sanity and for our peace of mind. In the 1700s, there was a doctor by the name of Dr. Klaprad. Dr. Klaprad made a study on memory. He went to see a lady that was suffering of memory loss, and he presented himself. I am Dr. Klaprad. He extended his hand, and the lady said, "Oh, my pleasure." He left the room. 5 minutes later, came back and said, "Do you remember me?" And she said, "No, I've never met you. I'm sorry." "Oh, no problem." He extended his hand again and said, "My name is Dr. Klaprad." Now, this happened over and over again, and each time the lady would completely forget that she, 5 minutes before that, met this man. This time the doctor tried something else. He put between his fingers a little pin. And when he extended his hand and says, "I am Dr. Klaprad," She said, ouch, when she shook his hand. The next time, the doctor came in and again asked her, do you remember me? She said, no, I've never met you before. And then he extended his hand and she pulled her hand away and did not want to shake his hand. So now Dr. Klaproth in his study started asking a question. He said, it doesn't make sense. On one hand, you do not remember who I am. On the other hand, you remember you had a bad experience with me. Does that sound familiar? So, what exactly happened? So the doctor came to the following conclusion. There are two types of memories. There is the memory of an emotion, and there is an emotional memory. The memory of an emotion is that I remember what I felt. An emotional memory is much deeper. It's much more connected to the essence of the person in the sense that I got excited by this. It caused me pleasure. It brought me pleasure. It caused me pain. And at that moment, the event is not only in my memory, but it's carved in my emotional memory. And as a result, it is something I will never forget. To this day, whenever I hear certain musics, certain sounds that I've heard before, when I went traveling with my kids many years ago in California in the mountains, I happen to be a big fan of the mountains, I reminisce and I relive the event of being with my wife and my kids and enjoying the moment. I might not remember the details of what happened, but it permits me to go into the imaginary world in that past experience and escape from the present stress or difficulty that I'm experiencing at this time. Which reminds me the famous story that Rabbi Hillel of Paritch says when he talks about the soul of this man which had a lot of stress and a lot of difficulties in his life, and he decided to go to the forest to escape his reality. What happened? He went, and over there he heard some music. The music was so soothing, it was so elevating, it was so special. It elevated him to a degree where he felt the wealthiest, the strongest, the most confident, the most free. He felt all the good possible feelings a person could feel. What happened? Once he left the forest and the music stopped, so that gentleman, wherever he went, once the stress came back, wherever he went, he was looking for that music. He was looking for that moment of connection. He was looking to feel elevated over all his problems. Till one day, he went to a store and heard a certain music, bought the CD, and was playing rewind, play in order to be able to hear that 30 seconds which made him reminisce, made him remember the beautiful music that he heard in the forest. Eventually, he lost his patience listening to that 30 seconds, listened to the whole song, and eventually listened to the whole CD, and eventually forgot why he bought the CD to start with. Says Rabbi Hillel of Paritch, this is the story of our life. The story of our life, this is the story of our soul. The soul, which listened to the higher music where it was not limited in a body, it was at the highest level of wealth, the highest level of connection, the highest level of pleasure, the highest level of awe. Everything was at the most fulfilling level. The music of the soul. And what happened is the soul got brutally, it was transferred to this world in a physical body with all the physical desires that we all have, with all the physical drives, animalistic drives that we have in this world, with the struggles of this world. And therefore the soul is looking with great intensity, it's looking for that song, right? The song of the soul. And it doesn't encounter it. And suddenly it finds drugs, it finds alcohol, it finds other types of addiction, it finds other pleasures, it finds the pursuit for success, the pursuit for wealth, the pursuit of this, etc., etc. And somewhere, somewhat, this resembles a little what it felt like to feel completely nurtured. It felt that you feel that you're able to escape the reality of this world. And that's how we got ourselves in this mess. Because we have a soul that has a tremendous drive to connect to its essence, therefore we find ourselves in a world where many times we fall into things that have nothing to do with what our soul wants. So what is the problem? The problem is that there's a dichotomy between the soul and the body. The soul hears one song, but it's in a physical body which is not tuned. It's not sensitive to that song. And therefore, the body, which is so busy and so distracted and so overwhelmed and overloaded with information, emotions, senses, everything, triggers, it's very difficult for the body to let the soul express itself. So, Bezrat Hashem, in about 2 months, we'll be celebrating Pesach. There is one event for me which is the central event of our liberation. What is the central event of our liberation? It's not the moment that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, goes to Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go." It's the moment that Moshe Rabbeinu goes and sees a bush burning but not being consumed. He stops to ask himself a question. But the Torah says, Asurana ve'er'e et hamar'e hagadol. Let me step back in order to see the great revelation. And then he asks himself the question, how is it possible that it's not being consumed? Only at that moment does God appear to Moshe and appoint him to be the redeemer of the Jewish people. Now, why is this story for me so central and so important today? Because later on, when Moshe Rabbeinu will announce the redemption of the Jewish people, he will go and say to them, it's time to go, guys. We're leaving Egypt. We're leaving slavery. It says over there, Velo shame'u el Moshe mekotzer ruach ume'avoda kasha. They could not listen to Moshe. The words of Moshe, words of redemption, could not penetrate their ears because of their shortness of breath and their great toil in slavery. Now, what is Pesach? Pesach is the time of our liberation. If you look at the night of Passover, what exactly are we doing? We're saying the story of the Jewish people. But how does it all start? It starts with the Manishtana Laila Azeh Mikol Halelot. It starts with somebody asking questions. And our sages teach us, here your child, your boy should ask a question. If you don't have a child, your wife should ask you questions. If you don't have a wife, your study partner should ask you questions. If you don't have a study partner, you should ask yourself questions. What is happening is that this is the secret of true freedom. Freedom starts the moment that I am able to think and ask questions. The problem of slavery is the fact that I cannot listen. I'm not a vessel. I'm not a recipient to receive any type of information. And this is because I don't know how to breathe. I have a shortness of breath. I don't give myself the opportunity to breathe, literally a deep breath. Moshe Rabbeinu, in order for him to have this revelation of God, understands asurana, I need to step back. Ve'er'eh et hamareh hagadol, and then I'm able to see the great phenomenon that's happening before us. I always remember the first time I came to Miami. I landed in Miami International. I remember the heat wave and the humidity and the salty air that attacked me at that moment. Most importantly, I remember going over that causeway, the MacArthur Causeway I think it's called, and seeing the water and the palm trees. And to this day, I can't forget that moment. It was amazing. Some almost 30 years later, I find myself in Miami passing by palm trees and water as if it was completely natural and completely normal to see such a beautiful sight. There is a concept in Kabbalah and Chassidut, and especially in Chassidut Chabad, which is called the Pnimi. The Pnimi is the Jew that decides to live his life at an innermost level, at a most invested level. There's a difference in Kabbalah. It mentions the concept of superficial versus essential. Most people live a superficial life. All day long, every moment of the day, it's about social media, it's about what others will think, it's about what I need to do after, what I did before, etc. It's never about living in the moment and completely separating yourself from any other moment and any ulterior motive. It's never about connecting to oneself and realizing what's happening inside of me. What happens is that for most of us, that same revelation that happened to Moshe could happen to us at a personal level. Zelim min Levanon, your soul is speaking to you. Actually, our sages teach us, Kol yom vayom, every day, a voice comes out of Har Chorev, and it calls out to the children, and it says, Shuvu banim shovavim erpa meshuvotechem. Return, rebellious children, I will be healed from your return. The Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, the founder of Hasidism, asks a question. How is that possible? And why is that of any value to us? When the voice of your soul is hearing that voice, I, in my body, do not hear it. So who cares if a voice is saying to me, return? So the answer the Baal Shem Tov gives is that the soul is like a rope made of 620 strings. 620 strings of light from inside the body to all the way to its source above. What happens when you shake a rope at its top? At the bottom, very far away, the shaking of the rope might not be so intense, but it's going to be slight. The one who's sensitive will be able to feel that awakening. Or just like when you are at a party and somebody is staring at you, and suddenly you feel uncomfortable. You turn around and you look and you see that this person is staring at me. At that moment, you turn around. The same thing with the soul. God speaks to the soul, which is outside the body. Only a very little part of the soul is inside the body. But if we are busy and our minds are consistently obstructed with noise, we will not hear the voice. If, on the other hand, we're able to calm our minds, Asura na ve'er'eh, I'm going to step back. I'm going to teach myself to step back and to see, to hear, to listen. At that moment, I'm able to connect to my soul, and I can actually be liberated of all the obstruction and difficulties that my world imposes on me. In order to do that, we need to take the time. We need to take a time every day to calm our minds and to attain the level of what's called in Kabbalah and Chassidut of shtika, silence. Silence is gold. The silence is actually the space in which God reveals himself. Our sages teach us that when the first 10 commandments were given, they were given with great fanfare. There was noise, there was thunder, there was lightning. Incredible things happened. Incredible things happened. But what happened with the first 10 commandments, the first tablets? They were broken. The second tablets, which were given with much more laws and much more explanations, etc., were given in silence. Lo berash Hashem. God is not in the ra'ash, in the noise. God is not in the fire. God is not in the wind. He is bikol dmama daka, in the silent, small voice. This is compared to a log of wood, which in the onset, when you light it up, because of the coarseness of the bark, there's a lot of sparks. There's a lot of flames. And you hear the crackling of the wood. Eventually, it dissipates and you don't see it anymore. When exactly is the fire the hottest? At the moment that you see it and you feel it and you hear it? Or at the moment it's inside the log of wood? and you don't hear it and see it anymore. So obviously it's in the second stage. Because in the first stage, where there's a lot of noise and images, a wind will come and completely extinguish and make everything disappear. While in the second step, once the coarseness has been consumed and you worked on yourself to connect to your deeper self, when the winds of challenges and distraction come towards you, a wind will come and actually ignite the flame which is inside the log. The purpose of calming our minds, the purpose of meditation, the purpose of breathing is to create that space so that we are able to connect to our inner selves. B'ezrat Hashem, next week we're going to introduce the concept of breathing according to Kabbalah and explain the concept of awaiting. How to make yourself a vessel to hear your inner self. God bless you all. Thank you for joining us today. And B'ezrat Hashem, with this in mind, let's be more mindful, let's be more conscious of what is happening around us. And most importantly, what's happening inside of us. Shavua Tov, a good week. God bless you.